Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the Islamic Pulse Talk Show. We are talking about the Al-Quds Day Rally 2025. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the Islamic Pulse Talk Show. We are here in the studio talking about the Al-Quds Day Rally and the International Day of Al-Quds, of course, which occurs on the last Friday of the holy month of Ramadan. It is just around the corner, 2025. In order to talk a little bit about the subject, we decided to invite Sayyid Agha Al-Raza. Sayyid, assalamu alaikum and welcome to the Islamic Pulse Talk Show.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. Always a pleasure.
Thank you so much for joining us again on the talk show. Of course, the holy month of Ramadan, almost over. We have the International Al-Quds Day and the Al-Quds Day Rally 2025, which occurs on the last Friday of the holy month of Ramadan, just around the corner. And so we wanted to talk a little bit about this. Sure, we talk about it every single year, but it seems like this year, especially after the 15-month-long genocide of the Palestinian people, and even the continuation of that genocide, because it's not really over, it just seemed like there's just so much more importance this year when it comes to the Al-Quds Day Rally and the Al-Quds Day International Day. So we just wanted to talk a little bit about it. We hand it over to you in the name of Allah.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. The Al-Quds Day, as everyone knows, is a day dedicated by Imam Khomeini Rizwanullah Ta'ala alayh, in which the idea is that all the freedom-loving people, all the rational people in the world, all the people who have not lost their true human essence,
their
justice,
moral compass,
their moral compass, justice-seeking people around the world, people of conscience, should rise up and protest this great heinous crime which is happening and continues to happen in the land of Palestine. And if you want to really look at how important this day is, and especially this year with the ongoing genocide. Now, a point that I'd like to highlight right here is that the genocide continues from the inception of Israel, from the inception of the illegitimate Zionist regime. But these 15 months have cranked it up out of proportion. And really it has been a shockwave for all people of conscience all over the world. You see the people protesting in the United States, in Europe, in Korea, South Korea, in Japan, in places that you don't even have any muballighin. You don't have many scholars there. You don't have, maybe they have no connection to the Islamic narrative as we know it today. But these people, out of their, the purity of their essence, the fact that they still are humans, right? From the point of view of humanity, they are rising up, they are taking up protests outside of the embassies of the false regime, of the illegitimate regime, and on the streets. Now, this is extremely significant. Especially since when we see that the people of the world are waking up, right? Maybe it's not the vast majority of the people of the world, but if you see the diversity of the people who are waking up, and even if you look at the magnitude of the people, the sheer numbers who are waking up and rising up, it is in itself a miracle of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if we kind of go back to the Quran, because there's always this lingering question in the minds of people, why is Palestine so exceptionally important, right? There is a minority of people who would say that why is any suffering anywhere important? Why should I care? Well, they are subject to a virus named apathy, right? And we should, inshallah, in another program or in another lecture, talk about how to cure this extremely deadly and cancerous spiritual virus. But for the majority of the people in the world, Muslim, non-Muslim, Shia, Sunni, Christians, Jews, people who believe themselves to be secular, right? For all of them, this question might arise that we have other hotspots of oppression in the world as well. So why focus primarily on Palestine. So if we go back to the Quran, for example, and try to address our Muslim brethren around the world first, and then go to the rest of humanity. So the Quran, what does the Quran say about Holy Quds? So we find that in Surah al-Isra, right in the beginning, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Subhanallazi asra bi'abdihi laylan min al-masjid al-haram ila al-masjid al-Aqsa, allazi barakna hawlahu linuriyahu min ayatina innahu huwas samiul basir. Right? So he says that exalted is He who, and I'm going to translate it in a more colloquial manner. Right? So exalted, glorified, pure is He who whiffed away His abd, His servant, because there's this idea of quick movement in Asra. He whiffed away His servant miraculously in the death of the night, in the depths of the night, from Masjid al-Haram, which is a strategic spiritual axis and pole in existence itself. If you read about the narrations about Masjid al-Haram, you'll see how this was the first point on earth when the earth was being created, that it rose out of the water. Right? So it has extreme spiritual significance and importance. Right? So he whiffed away his servant in the death of the night from Masjid al-Haram ila al-Masjid al-Aqsa, to the al-Aqsa mosque in al-Quds, Palestine. And now he explains what this al-Aqsa mosque is, right? He tells you some of its characteristics, one of its extremely important characteristics. And please note this fact. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there can be a number of attributes about the al-Aqsa mosque. Who made it, who prayed there, the events in history that happened, right, during prophetic times. But he chooses the most important aspect of the Masjid al-Aqsa because he's linking this to the Miraj, to the night movement, to the night ascension of the Holy Prophet, right? So what does he say? He says, Allazi barakna hawlahu, the mosque that we blessed and we benedicted and we purified, right? Its entire environment, everything around it. See? Now, right from here, we can understand
it's a sacred place.
That it's not just the mosque. It is the entire area around the mosque, Al-Quds al-Sharif, right? That is sacred in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So sacred that He chose it to be the launch pad for Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam's ascension towards the heavens, right? Allazi barakna hawlahu linuriyahu min ayatina. Here he talks about why the ascension happened. So Allah took the Holy Prophet on that nightly journey to show him those exclusive, those highest of His signs, the signs of His majesty, of His power, of His existential authority, right? And indeed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Samiun Basir. He is all hearing, all seeing, right? So let us just kind of visit very quickly. The word that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has used here to signify or to explain what Masjid al-Aqsa is barakna. And barakna, the root word is baraka, right? Baraka. What we would normally call barkat, right?
Barkat.
So Allama Tabatabai, exactly, barakallah feek, right? Allama Tabatabai, in his extremely important tafsir al-Mizan, he goes and he searches for all the instances of this word in the Quran in its various morphological forms, Mubarak, Barakna, Baraka, etc. And then he comes to a conclusion of what this word means within the Quran. So apart from its meaning in Arabic in general, what is the Quranic terminology of Barakah? And he comes to this conclusion. Barakat is the good, the virtue, the blessing that is appropriate to the essence and nature of any given phenomena. So for example, if food is given barakah by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, food, an apple, has a certain amount of potentiality in terms of existence.
Right, right.
How far it can rise up. How much good can it provide to someone who eats it, right? And we're talking holistically, not just physical good, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Now, if that apple has barakah from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it will provide you with that maximum of material and spiritual benefit.
Sure.
Right? Because now it's been supercharged. It's like, if you think of it in terms of sci-fi movies, it's like a super apple now, right? So it's been supercharged with all of that barakah blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Yeah.
Which,
based upon its capacity.
based upon its capacity. Obviously, it cannot have the same kind of barakah that the Holy Quran has. It cannot have the same kind of barakah coming down, for example, that for example, a thing that is smaller than it, a speck of dust might have, right? A speck of dust, its potentiality is more limited than, for example, an apple, right? So it's always correlated to the essence of that phenomena itself, right? Now the question that rises here, because we're talking in terms of the night journey of the Prophet, right, is why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala need to bring the Prophet to Masjid al-Aqsa? You know, you're all powerful, right?
Yeah, sure.
Why are you doing this extra effort? Just take him to the heavens from Masjid al-Haram, right?
Sure.
Masjid al-Haram being the
question.
most important, the most significant spiritual center on this earth, right? So maybe if we think about it, and if we look at the ayah, the verse of the Quran, the reason why Allah points out this whole issue of barakat for Masjid al-Aqsa, the fact that Masjid al-Aqsa is Mubarak, shows that it has something to do with the cause and effect relationship that exists in this universe that could lead the Prophet to that nightly ascension, right? So because obviously everything has its own potential, right?
Right, right.
So the Prophet needed to come to Masjid al-Aqsa, to this heartland of the Prophets, to this place where most of the Prophets walked, and they blessed the ground with their existential blessing, right? He needed to get there in order to rise to the heavens, right? So we see that in another way of putting it, barakah is the key to Allah's proximity, right? If you seek barakah through, for example, food, right? Then that key to Allah's proximity will come into this food, right? If you seek it through gaining knowledge, it will come there. If you seek it through prayer, it will come there, etc., 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 until you reach the highest positions of proximity to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this shows us something very important.
Right.
It shows us the significance of...
Well, yeah, our original question was this, that why is it that we are zooming so much on Palestine?
So it shows us the significance, the extraordinary and exclusive significance of Masjid al-Aqsa. Right?
MashaAllah.
Masjid al-Aqsa is not just a coincidence that the Prophet rose from here.
Right.
There is an existential connection between Masjid al-Aqsa and the heavens above. Right? The kind of connection that would allow the physical body of the Prophet to rise into those spiritual realms. Right?
Sure.
So what's really interesting, the question that might come to someone's mind here is that, is Masjid al-Aqsa more sanctified, more sacred than the Holy Kaaba?
Sure.
Why couldn't the Prophet rise from the Kaaba? You see, understanding these things obviously requires a base of Islamic philosophy, Islamic irfan, etc. But to put it in very lay terms, the primary, the most holy place on earth is obviously the Holy Kaaba.
The Holy Kaaba.
The most holy entity on earth, or in the entirety of existence after Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is the essence of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Right.
So if we were to look at the hierarchy of spirituality, then obviously hands up, right? All the risk, all barakah, all sustenance, all excellence, all perfection comes only from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through the channel, and exclusively through the channel of the Holy Prophet and the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, right? So the Holy Prophet, he is the fountainhead of all of excellences and perfections. So then the question can be upgraded. Why even go to the Kaaba? You know, the Prophet himself, like he's complete, right?
Wherever he is, from his own
Wherever
home.
he is, yeah. So he
Do
could
the
rise from
Mi'raj,
his own home, right?
Yeah.
And Hazrat Khadija's house isn't a small, right? It's Hazrat Fatima's house anyway. So anyway, the Prophet, but to answer this question in terms that are not very, like, philosophical and people can understand it, is this. The true fountainhead of barakah is the essence, the spiritual and existential essence of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? It is Rasulullah who, when he goes to the Kaaba, gives Kaaba barakah, right?
Yeah.
Even historically, when Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam, Hazrat Ismail alayhi salam, they created the Kaaba, they built up the Kaaba. It was the spiritual stream of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam from the spiritual realms that allowed Ibrahim alayhi salam to be Ibrahim alayhi salam, for Ismail alayhi salam to be Ismail alayhi salam, right? And for the Kaaba to be the Kaaba, right? So we study this in Islamic philosophy and Islamic irfan and in the tafsir of the Holy Quran as well, right? Rahmatul lil alameen, not just in his own time, from the beginning of time to the end of time, right? The fountainhead of Allah's mercy for everything. So it is the Prophet who is most significant. The Prophet takes symbolically, he goes to the Kaaba, he goes to Masjid al-Haram, he makes it more blessed, and he takes from its blessing as well. And then goes to Masjid al-Aqsa, makes it more blessed, right? And supercharges its blessing in order to rise to heaven, right?
Almost like it is the Messenger of Allah who supercharges this already sacred place.
Absolutely.
And then leads to the ascension.
Absolutely. So it's not an issue of which mosque is more sacred. The hierarchy of the mosques is something that is not up to debate, right? It's set in stone.
Yeah.
And the hierarchy of the personalities as well is also set in stone. It's very clear. Everyone knows about this, right? So we're not saying that al-Aqsa is more sacred than some other place, or some other place, the Kaaba, ma'azallah, is deficient in terms of spirituality, of spiritual power, that Allah had to take His Prophet to al-Aqsa in order to allow the spiritual ascension to the spiritual and physical ascension to the heavens, right? No, that is not the case here. But to explain this becomes very complicated, because the spiritual realm is not a geographical, temporal, spatial realm. There's no before and after in the spiritual realm. There's even cause and effect can become very blurry in the spiritual realm. But what we know to be musallamat, absolute truths, is that the fountainhead of everything in the entire universe and existence, massive Allah, apart from Allah Himself, is the Prophet himself, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right?
And if we get into the whole spiritual dimensions, then
I'm trying
to avoid a two-part talk show for Al-Quds Day, but inshallah, let's see where it goes.
But I'd like to squeeze in a point here as well. Apart from the entire spiritual philosophy of why the ascension had to begin at Masjid al-Aqsa, let us take a few points home, right? One, the extraordinary importance of Masjid al-Aqsa is proven by this verse.
Yeah.
The fact that anything that is so extraordinarily important to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is also extraordinarily important to the Prophet of Islam sallallahu alaihi wasallam, above all other makhlukat, all other creations, right?
Yes, yeah.
And to the Ahl al-Bayt alayhimus salam, right? So in the terms of speaking, it is their property. It is like fadak. It is like fadak. If something happens to that property, it is the first heart to be broken will be the heart of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the Ahl al-Bayt alayhimus salam.
Yeah.
So this is point number 2. Point number 3, bringing things down a notch, stepping down from the spiritual realms to the material realm, right? To the history of humanity. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala encompasses all of history. For Him there is no past, no future. He sees everything all at once, right? In fact, interestingly, the verse says, Innahu huwa sami'ul basir. He hears and He listens everything, right? Maybe one of the reasons for Al-Aqsa to be the designated launchpad for this great and unprecedented, may I add, unprecedented event in the entirety of the history of the prophets.
Yeah.
The rise, the nightly rise, right? Maybe one of the points there is to seal the status of Masjid al-Aqsa as one of the most sacred points on earth for the Muslim nation, right? So that no one could say, oh, this has nothing to do with us, right? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saw what history would bring about. He saw how some conniving villains would sit in a room and sign the Sykes-Picot Agreement. Some other conniving human beings, followers of Shaitan, would bring in these displaced people from Europe and then usurp the land that is sacred to all Abrahamic religions and try to turn it into the center of villainy in the world.
Yeah,
because he knew this,
evil and
very similar to how the Holy Prophet used to talk about the virtues of Imam Hussein alayhi salam in front of all of his companions.
yeah.
The virtues of Imam Ali alayhi salam in front of all of his companions, right? And he would say that transfer these virtues, these ahadith to people who come afterwards, right? Especially the hadith al-Ghadir, right? Why was the reason there? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was seeing what would happen in the future. And he was trying to vaccinate everyone for that, right?
Yeah, sure, yeah.
So maybe the same thing was going on here as well. We can't say for sure, obviously.
Yeah, that's
but
what I'm
given
saying,
the
maybe.
foundations of our Islamic beliefs, the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is, he's all-knowing and all-understanding, right? And he is the one who, according to the Quran, is the destroyer of the conspiracies of the enemies, right?
Right, right.
Maybe this was how he was cementing in the status of Al-Quds in the Holy Quran.
You know, Sayyid, I think like at least, you know, up to this point, because I again, like I said, I'm trying to avoid a two-part Al-Quds Day talk show, even though it might end up turning into one of those. But one of the things is the fact that you brought up in the beginning, that is this international aspect of Al-Quds and the International Al-Quds Day, right? The media will try to very cunningly and, you know, in a very negative manner, try to portray it as something that is specific only to Shias or specific only to revolutionaries or specific to a very small group of people, when in reality, it is something, as you said, that it involves people from all backgrounds, from all faiths, and that the fundamental thing that brings all of these people together from these different backgrounds and different lives, if you will, is this opposition to tyranny and oppression and this support of the oppressed, right? And the oppressed globally, which is the first point we said. And then I think we continued talking about that the importance of Palestine itself, the importance of these holy lands, the importance of Masjid al-Aqsa, of course, as Imam Khamenei says, is the first Qibla of the Muslims, right? Before the Qibla was changed towards the Holy Kaaba, and of course becoming a focus of worship of the Almighty Allah 5 times a day. And so up to there, I don't know if we want to continue. We've kind of established the importance of al-Aqsa, not only, well, to Muslims and to Islam as well, and perhaps continue on.
So just like summing up what the significance of this is for the Muslims, not just for the Shia, but for all of our Sunni brothers all over the world, alhamdulillah, who are also at the forefront of defending Palestine.
Exactly.
So just to sum it up, Surah al-Isra, verse number 1, the night ascension of the Prophet. If you summarize what that is, before the ascension actually begins, is the locking in of these 2 mosques. In a manner of speaking, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, look, I took the blessing of the Kaaba, gave the Prophet this blessing, he took it to Masjid al-Aqsa, infused the Masjid al-Aqsa with the spirit of the Kaaba as well as the spiritual excellence of his own soul. And therefore this night ascension happened, right? So what do we have as a result? Masjid al-Aqsa is no longer just Masjid al-Aqsa. Masjid al-Aqsa has the soul of the Kaaba in it. Right? This is, even in modern times, sometimes you have sister cities, right? And that is just arbitrary,
cities,
it's just
that's
something that is
a good way to
signed,
put
right?
it. These are sister
But
cities.
these are spiritually locked in together. So if the Al-Aqsa is attacked, the Kaaba is attacked. Sometimes a great fallacy that happens and is brought about in the hearts and minds of the Muslims, especially, unfortunately, by Zionist Muslim so-called scholars, people with long beards, and, right, is that, look, the Kaaba is safe. We are protecting the Kaaba, right? So it's really not an emergency if the Al-Aqsa is being harmed.
No big deal.
No big deal, you know.
We'll leave it to the king of Jordan, who's the custodian.
Yeah, or whatever other king, right? The Kaaba is...
You know, the king of Jordan is the custodian of the holy sites of al-Quds.
The custodian not appointed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but by the British mandate. Right? Interestingly, the Quran says that those who are not of the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they have no right to be the custodians of Allah's mosques. It is interesting. Right? Anyway.
I mean, to be honest with you, I know it's kind of a tangent. Don't forget where you were going, right? But if you look at it, they don't even have a right to be the custodian / king of their own countries, right? It's not like your own people elected you to be the king. It's not like your tribe was the king of this nation anyways in the first place. How did you become king? Well, because the British, you know, Zionists and these imperial Anglo-Saxon powers came in. They thought that you were worthy enough to be subservient to them. And they handpicked you and they put you in these chairs, and then they gave you strong militaries and weapons, you know, so that you protect their interest in your country. The guy in Egypt is the same. The guy in Bahrain is the same. The guys in Kuwait is the same. The Al Saud is the same, you know. But anyways, so
and as we call them, Muslim Zionists.
Yeah, Muslim
and
Zionists.
we're not fooled by a statement here and a statement there, because they're afraid of their own populations as well. Of course, right?
Which are pro-Palestine,
which are
and incredibly anti-Israel,
extremely anti-Israel, right? So they have to kind of, for face saving, they have to show themselves of this sort. But all of these rulers of these states are, and their track record shows it, they are Muslim Zionists, right?
The Emirates.
They are Zionists posing as Muslims, just as you have Zionists posing as Christians, Zionists posing as Jews. Right?
Exactly.
So
this is a very important point.
This is the same cabal.
They're posing themselves as these various different religions because their own religions fundamentally do not promote the things that these guys do or the things that they believe. You know what I mean? This whole Zionist cabal.
As our respected Jewish scholars who come out with us on Al-Quds Day every year, despite the persecution they face, not in Palestine, but in these so-called free countries, in the UK, in the United States, the persecution that they face, day in and day out. Just go, I'll ask the audience here today to go and search the internet for these people, right? And you'll see, they'll tell you in their own YouTube videos, etc., how they've been persecuted throughout their lives, how life has become hell for them, but they do not back away from their slogan, which is that Israel, the legitimate Zionist regime, is heresy against God.
Is heresy against their own Jewish religion.
Exactly.
And well, these are things, again, I know it's a tangent, but it seems kind of important. These are very subtle points that for some reason the people of the world don't seem to understand or take into consideration, or perhaps they're bombarded with so much media that it doesn't give them time to think that how is this Jewish Orthodox meaning that they are closer, more conservative to the original teachings of Judaism as compared to, for example, a liberal Jew or a secular Jew or a LGBT Jew, because you even have those guys, right? So this guy who is closer to the original religion than all of these other Jewish people is saying that the state of Israel is a heresy against the... Like, what more do you want these people to say for the truth?
As well. They're not just conservative Jews, practicing Jews. These guys are scholars. They're rabbis.
Yeah, they're rabbis.
They're rabbis. And they even have like this whole lineage of rabbis. So they're not just like someone who did his own research and became a rabbi and no one accepts him.
Self-proclaimed.
No, they are like from a family of rabbis. Right? So But returning to that point, because we don't want to miss that out, right?
Yeah, sure.
So
yeah.
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, just
Sister
like we had
cities.
sister cities in the world, but those sister cities are just in word, right? They're just on pen and paper. And
These are spiritual.
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bound these two mosques together through the night ascension of the Holy Prophet, right?
Even with the reappearance of Imam al-Mahdi, you have Kufa, you have the Masjid al-Haram, and then you have Masjid al-Aqsa.
Yeah, this triangle will be completed,
connected
right?
in this spiritual.
And these aren't arbitrary things. It's not just because, oh, they are in West Asia, so, you know, okay, let's put these into the hadith. No. There is a spiritual binding between them, right? And that shows that if Masjid al-Aqsa is in occupation, by default, de facto, one of the reasons, brothers and sisters around the world, that we see that Haramullah in Mecca is in the hands of Muslim Zionists is because we allowed al-Quds to fall into the hands of the worst forms of Zionists.
Yeah.
When we sometimes ask, oh Allah, why don't you answer our prayers about salvation and about peace and about, the lifting of oppression? Well, brothers and sisters, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says in the Quran, I will only change the destiny of people when they try to change it themselves.
Yeah, when they take action, they get up, do something about it.
Right? So these are bound together. Now, if we place a hadith here as well, just to like hammer in the idea, what the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam says about a true Muslim who, when some other Muslim is hurt, he feels the same pain within his own self, right?
Yeah,
he says that they're like one body.
Yeah, one body, yeah.
Right? They're one body. When one part of the body is hurt, what happens? Right? If I get like a wound in my hand or in my foot, what
like
happens?
Your whole body hurts.
The entire body, not only does it hurt, because we sometimes we kind of do this disservice to the ahadith.
Sure,
right?
sure, yeah. So
it's not just hurting. The whole body runs towards that part in order to cure it. The entire immune system becomes supercharged. It rushes towards your blood flows towards that part. Your white blood cells flow towards that part. Your whole body reconfigures its metabolism in order to allow that wound to heal. Because that becomes the prime priority of the entire system. Right? Okay, in the time of the Holy Prophet, maybe we did not know about all of this biology, but we know this today, and the time and the words of the Holy Prophet are eternal words. In fact, interestingly, even the Arabic used there is indicative of this fact. Right? So it's more than just hurting. Sometimes we translate it and it becomes, okay, yes, I'm hurting as well. I'm hurting, and it hurts. So what's for dinner? Right? What's for iftar? Right? No. It's about not being able to become comfortable, being pushed to move, do something about it. That is, you're supposed to act like those white blood cells.
It's really interesting because very rarely do people, and I think perhaps I didn't think about it in this manner either, that, clearly when you have a wound, you don't just say, okay, I have a wound, I'm bleeding to death, and, you take all of your efforts and you concert all of your efforts and focus all of your efforts on that wound to do something about it, to fix that wound.
And becomes your preoccupation, right? It becomes you almost, especially if the wound is something extremely important, right? It's a huge wound, it's a deep wound, that you're going to, it doesn't matter whether you're in the most important meeting in the world, you're doing the most important thing in the world.
What's for iftar?
What's for iftar? Nothing will matter anymore. All that will be filling up your mind, like those neurons will be flashing so hard that you won't be able to concentrate on anything else except for healing this. This will become your first and foremost priority. So now, the parallel that I wanted to make, and alhamdulillah, we also talked about the hadith as well, is that why is this hadith, why does a Muslim feel this way about another Muslim? Because of that spiritual bond. That bond of ideology, that bond of belief. Right? The same kind of bond is created between these two mosques and the Ahlul Bayt and the Prophet, right? By Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through His spiritual binding of these entities. So just imagine what happens to the heart of the Holy Prophet when the sanctity of the Holy Mosque in Palestine, in al-Quds, is trampled upon. What happens to the spiritual heart of the Kaaba? Right? In Islamic philosophy, many of our philosophers, many of our sages, based on the Holy Quran, يُسَبِّحُ لِلَّهِ مَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَمَا فِي الْأَرْضِ. One of the tafasir, or the preferred tafsir is this, that we believe that everything has life according to its own level of existence. And the Kaaba is huge existence. Don't look at the stones, look at the soul of the Kaaba. Look at the soul of the Kaaba, how it must shake. And for so many years, it is shaking. And we go and we circle around the Kaaba. Imagine going to someone's house. Imagine, for example, if you have Imam Riza right here, physically right here today, right? And we go for ziyarah. Or Imam Hussein, he's there. In Karbala. In the heat of battle, Imam Hussein is there in Karbala. And somehow, miraculously, you were sent right next to him. What would you do? Would you fight against his enemies, defending him? Will you get charged up and bring in all of your motivation, all of your energy to fight against his enemies? Or will you just stand there and say, Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdillah wa lal arwahi allati hallat bifinaik? Right?
Sure, yeah, you would defend him. And
right? Obviously, that won't be the time of ziyarah, right?
If hopefully we don't run away.
Hopefully we don't run away. So now we see millions of Muslims going around the Kaaba. The Kaaba is mourning for al-Aqsa. But they don't care.
Ignoring it.
They're ignoring it.
Yeah.
Right? Because they are away from the Quran. If they were reading the Quran, pondering about the Quran, in this month of Ramadan, they would understand these connections. Because brothers, frankly, Sayyidina and all of our brothers and sisters out there, we're not some great scholars. We're not like Imam Khomeini, Imam Khamenei. We're just narrating to you the words of the scholars, right? When we can understand this, so can any other Muslim. Right? So this kind of sums up the significance of al-Aqsa for our Muslim brothers. We should now go towards what significance it has for our non-Muslim brothers as well.
You know, Sayyid, I just want to add, even though I keep on getting nervous because I'm tracking time and I know where it's going. But this idea where, you know, when we look even on a very and I don't know if this is where you were going to go, but a very non-spiritual, a very you know, irfan, philosophy type thing, when you look at the numbers on the ground and you look at the very real, practical oppression that has happened, you know, and you can almost make a, you know, they call it a checklist of the various different types of oppression and crimes that have been committed over, I don't know, at least 76 years, which is the inception of Israel. But I don't want to limit it to that, you know. Normally we limit it to those 76 years or whatever. But I think this is a much longer plan. You know, you brought up the Sykes-Picot Agreement. This is part of Israel. The Balfour Declaration is part of Israel. The breaking of the Muslim Ummah into small pieces and balkanization is a part of this whole big, you know,
in fact,
project.
The project goes far back. Remember what we talked about when we discussed the difference between Judaism and Zionism?
Right, sure, yeah.
We talked about how the Quran, when the Quran talks about Bani Israel, it's not just like narrating history because it had pages to fill. No. It's telling you the socio-political structure and the model of the enemy, right? So in Bani Israel, there are clear categorizations within the Quran. There are some within Bani Israel who are pious, righteous, good people. We see them today as well. We see them, alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. Our brothers and sisters, in fact, they have been given this medal of honor by Imam Khamenei, the deputy of Imam Zaman, right? That they are the extension of the resistance front. Right? And that includes even our Jewish sisters and brothers who are marching against this genocide right now.
Yeah, during the Palestinian genocide, you had a large group of youth that were Jewish. They went inside the Capitol building with their, you know, ceasefire type, no war shirts on. Went in there, and to the point where they were even arrested.
And not just young people, because one of the pieces of propaganda right now is that these are young, they are disruptors. They're just, this attention-getting behavior, right?
Experimenting.
No, for years upon years,
these Jewish rabbis.
The Jewish rabbis, even Jewish academics, Jewish artists, people from the elite within the Jewish community.
Yeah.
So, for example, I don't know whether we should name a few or not. Maybe we don't have the time. But if you look this up, Alhamdulillah, there are so many potent, powerful Jewish voices out there who have not, and it's not a new fad for them. It's not something that's become fashionable now. From the inception of Israel, from the inception of this regime, they have been standing against. And again, coming back to the Quran, this is not something new.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
From the time of the Prophet, from the time of the previous prophets, alayhi salam, we've always had good Jews, good Christians, God-fearing Jews, God-fearing Christians, people of conscience, people who understood the soul of the Torah, the soul of the Bible, and they knew intrinsically, inherently, they knew what right was from wrong.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So the Quran talks about this, right? And then there's this other category, two more categories of the Jews in the Quran, of the Bani Israel. One is what we call historical Zionists. So we said that back in the day, obviously this brand name wasn't there.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
But the characteristics of some of the elite within the Bani Israel in the time of the Prophet and before him and after him are mentioned in the Quran. And people can refer to that video if they want to. And the third category are the general population of the Bani Israel who unfortunately follow this elite. So they are also a category, a portion of the general population of Bani Israel during the time of the Prophet and before him, who followed this elite instead of following the pious elite. And this is not something specific just to the Jews. The same is true for the Christians. The same is true for the Muslims. So for example, for the Muslims, even today during the time of the Prophet, you have these three categories. You have the A'immatul Haqq, and then you have the A'immatul Kufr, or the A'immatul Jawr. There are different terminologies that can be used. And then there's this population in between, who sometimes they don't follow the A'immatul Haqq. They leave him alone, right? And they unfortunately go and follow. So this is the sociology of the Quran, right? And when it becomes sociology, it becomes about human behavior, then it's not specific to one person or the other, to one nation or the other. Yes, some nations might have some specific characteristics of themselves, and if they are important in terms of the general movement of humanity towards perfection, then the Quran or the Sunnah will mention it. As we mentioned about some of the characteristics of the false elite, the corrupt elite of Bani Israel, whom we said were historical Zionists. So the project of Zionism, putting aside the branding that it has today, has been a project that has been a historical project from the time of the biblical prophets, right?
You know, Syed, before we continue, like I wanted to just finish that idea about the checklist, that if we make a checklist of the crimes that have been committed just in these 76 years, and again, we said it was much wider than that, but just limiting to the 76 years of this fake existence of the Zionist regime, you will find that they have done the most overwhelming, if not most, if not all of the crimes imaginable in these 76 years. So, apart from the very spiritual and religious and the jurisprudential and theological aspect, you kind of have this aspect of on-the-ground reality, you know what I mean? So for 76 years, whether it is starving the population of food, or starving the population of water, or starving the population of basic needs such as electricity and gas, starving them from medicine, not allowing medicine to be in, not allowing aid to go in, or whether it is crimes against women and women's rights, crimes against children, children's rights, crimes against innocent human beings, against the sick, against medical centers, hospitals, universities, schools, refugee camps, stealing people's properties and their homes, targeted killings, right? Maiming and handicapping children. Each one of these are different categories of crimes that have been committed and are being committed against the Palestinian people for 76 years. Go to other places in the world and show me a checklist where you have all of these crimes against one people nonstop. Yeah, sure. If you want to say like the Rwanda genocide, this was a small time frame and people were killed, but go and make this checklist. I don't have time to do the whole thing, right? For people to see that this is something that is continuing, is still in the present day.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? And on a very physical level, on a very numbers,
with the
factual
support
level.
of all of the power centers in the world.
Yeah. that this is why we are focusing on Palestine. You show us another place in the world that has this many crimes being committed for this long in the present day, we will
Without remorse.
We'll
Without-
focus our attention there.
Absolutely.
But this is even as a very humanitarian thing, and
something that anyone can understand. Like, it would be accurate to say that the regime in Israel has left no stone unturned in trying to discover or invent new atrocities and then actually put them into execution.
There was a doctor, he said that the amount of children that I see who have been shot in the eye, there is no way that this is not being done on
There
purpose.
is no probability on earth
that this is random.
that this could be random.
You know, and it was like an American doctor or something. He wasn't even like a Muslim, so they say the Muslim, numbers or whatever. And he said that the amount of, there's like tens of thousands of children with like amputees, right? They either don't have a leg or they don't have arms. The amount of orphans that are, and it's continuing, right? The UNICEF a couple of weeks ago said that they're very seriously running out of water. These are people in front of our face that are, being starved to death, meaning, they have no food, no water.
Absolutely.
Honestly, what are you going to compare?
Not just in the last 15 months.
Yeah.
People should know this, many people might already do. Imagine New York, London, I don't know, Berlin, the state of Texas. Imagine a regime coming in and placing a calories quota on the amount of food that you can eat. Imagine. Just imagine,
McDonald's
just think about
work,
that. Yeah. Just think about that. A starvation diet for people for 76 years.
Yeah. No, it's unbelievable.
Right?
I don't
It's
understand.
as if the Zionists, right, they learned from Hitler and they came and implemented this in Palestine. And this is why one of the things that many scholars around the world say, if you look at history, the Jews that were persecuted by Hitler were themselves victims of Zionism. Because Zionists behind the scenes, British Zionists, American Zionists were funding these oligarchs, were funding Hitler in his campaign, and they even had signed treaties that some of the Jewish scholars have done this research and brought in their books and have then later been persecuted and been labeled as outcasts and their lives destroyed, right?
Yeah.
I don't remember the name of the book right now, but maybe we can add this to the video later on. But there's a book in which a Jewish scholar, a Jewish academic, he brings in all of these documents showing how the international Zionist elite, because Zionism was there, already there, right? The international Zionist elite were in cahoots with the Nazis.
It's interesting. I did some research one time, and I ran across this this research that it said, and people can go and check it out online, right? And that is that the Jews that were in Germany had written a request of some sort to the Jewish organizations in America, requesting them to be able to bring these Jews from Germany to America. And the American Jews, they actually rejected this request from the Jews in Germany.
And obviously,
right?
we're talking about Jewish elite in the United States who
were supposed
coming
to
circle again.
And
Zionists.
you will see that the Jews in Germany, they went to Poland and they went to some other countries in Europe, but very little to none went to the United States of America. I just wanted to add that, okay, let's say this whole Holocaust thing, fine, whatever. But that is not something that occurred for 76 years.
Yeah.
This is something that is occurring for 76 years,
Continuously.
non-stop, continuously.
And even if the Holocaust was there, what does it have to do with Palestine? Were the Palestinians involved in the Holocaust?
Yeah.
Should they pay the price of the Holocaust?
The Germans should pay the price.
The Germans should be. They should give their own provinces to the Jewish people to create a country if they're truly sincere about what they say.
Now,
right?
one of the things I wanted to add, and I'll let you go back and carry the discussion forward, but was that when these Jewish voices that come out in opposition to the Zionist state and to the Zionist regime and to what they're doing, right? Very vocal. Not only are they scholars, but professors, rabbis, youth, I mean, normal people,
Absolutely.
elite, all of this group of people, when they come and they speak out against Zionist crimes, and then these people are, like you said, their lives are destroyed, their careers are destroyed, they're at many times arrested, if not thrown in jail. In Israel, they're thrown in jail.
False
right?
cases are made against them.
How is this not anti-Semitic? You know what I mean? Like Imam Sayyid al-Khamenei on March 8th, 2025, he in one of his speeches, he said that these things are completely unveiling the utter hypocrisy of the West.
Yeah.
You do not believe in free speech. You do not believe in anti-Semitism. They have used anti-Semitism as a card to just promote their own agenda.
Absolutely.
You know,
absolutely.
so this Jewish guy who was born Jewish, his mother is Jewish, his father is Jewish, his ancestors are Jewish, he is being oppressed, right? And that's not called
Many
anti-Semitism.
of them being children or grandchildren of Holocaust survivors.
Yeah, this is unbelievable.
Which is like
it's ridiculous.
adding insult to injury, right? So, as Imam Khamenei said, these are just tools in the hands of international Zionism. These tags, these words, these phrases, human rights, women's rights, freedom, democracy, anti-Semitism, etc. These are just tags. They use them where they want to, right? So women, if they are in Palestine, they're not important. But if they're in other places where it serves the purposes and the agenda of the Zionist elite, then they are important. So one of the things that, as you mentioned, that the checklist of the atrocities is like it goes on for pages upon pages, and you'll find stuff there that was not invented before the Zionist regime. Right? The kind of things that they do. Like there was this clip that everyone's seen online.
Go ahead.
Of two soldiers, and look at the audacity. They're recording themselves as well. So they're sitting there, snipers, and they're betting on how they'll kill this poor guy who's already wounded. He's already been incapacitated, so he's no longer a threat, even if there was a threat to start with, right? And they're betting on who'll hit him in the head or somewhere else, right? These are the kinds of genocidal criminals that we are dealing with. When they talk about October the 7th and they say, oh, innocent people were killed. No, innocent people were not killed. First of all, the entire lies, they have been unmasked, alhamdulillah.
The Hannibal Directive, most of the people killed, the Zionist Israelis killed themselves.
Exactly. And then the soldiers who were killed in their bases were active soldiers. They were occupying force. Right? Why did you kill German soldiers when you were in World War II? Right? Weren't they human beings? This is common sense. You attack an occupying force. You kill them, right? The women who were killed, the young women, the normal women that were killed, were again reserve soldiers of the Zionist army. Children, it has been debunked, no children were killed. It was false propaganda in line with the nature of Zionism, that it always comes out with these myths and false news about how it was oppressed. Even while they are cutting off someone's head, they say, oh, look how terribly oppressed I am. They are making me dirty my knife with this filthy blood. That is the way that they portray themselves in, even when they're persecuting the Jews themselves. So according to the Hannibal Directive, which I find on social media, that there are animals around the world who actually defend this. Imagine the lack of humanity that a person might have. Like, even if you're on the side of the Zionists, at least defend the Zionists who would be dying, right?
Yeah, that the Hannibal Directive is wrong. They're your own Jewish people.
It's just wrong. It's just plain wrong. It doesn't matter whether it is used against soldiers who have been captured, or whether it is used against the so-called civilians. We don't have civilians in Israel, according to the Geneva Convention. But the so-called civilian population, it was Israel who came in, bombarded entire areas in order to somehow kill the people before they could be transferred into Gaza. Right? And then if you look at how they behave, like totally, like bombing the hospitals, like turning off the oxygen of children in incubators. Right? And this was recorded, and not just by Muslims, but by international medical staff on the ground in Palestine at that time. right?
And I mean, like even graves. To me, this was one of the most shocking things. Is they were digging out the bodies from people's graves and like destroying cemeteries. It's like they're already dead, man.
When you talk
like,
about this, and if you haven't seen the videos, and if you haven't seen the unbiased reports by objective people who were witnesses, who were objective witnesses, right? If we didn't have that, even we wouldn't believe this, because it's so otherworldly.
Yeah,
it's like something out of a horror movie, right?
Yeah.
But this is the nature of Zionism.
Yeah, they
This
said
is
that
the nature of Zionism.
some of the bodies that were returned, so the dead bodies, of course, that were returned by the Zionist regime of Palestinians, that many a times they were not only completely deformed where you couldn't identify their faces, but many a times they had kidneys missing.
Yeah.
They had other, organs that you can donate, I guess, online or in the black market or whatever. They were missing these body parts, right? I mean, it is just completely insane.
Mind-baffling.
It's like, like you said, from this thing in a horror movie. Say it because I have to...
Just let me put in this one sentence from the Quran. The Quran talks about how Bani Israel, the Zionists back in history, right? How they're elite.
Yeah.
They would kill 70 prophets in a single day.
Yeah.
Right? And maybe before these modern times, when we read this, we would say like, hey, it's 70 prophets, maybe like it's a metaphor. Right? But now you see this happening. You see, it's not just when you say Anbiya in the Holy Quran, right? They are the epitome of innocence, right? The epitome of virtue, right? But you can see the potentiality of these criminals right now in front of our faces, in the media, in the mainstream media as well. How 40,000 plus, and now many of the bodies are under rubble, right? We don't even know how many hundreds of thousands this will come to when they start removing the rubble, right? Because the entire cities, entire blocks have been obliterated. But at least 40 to 50,000 people have been torn to pieces, right? Within 15 months. Right? So we see the truth of the Quran in these days as well.
So Sayyid, like I think we kind of talked about the overall situation and the importance and the dire circumstances that we're living in, I guess we can put it in this way, in the present day, and how that just kind of really adds the motivation to go out there and make these Al-Quds Day rallies bigger and more livelier, than ever before, and to try to bring in people from various different backgrounds to reach out to people, and to try to make this, as big as we possibly can, especially taking into consideration all the different things that we just talked about, the sacredness of the al-Aqsa mosque and masjid. And while it is so sacred for Muslims, and I would say even for Christians and Jews, they should also think about this, that the amount of crimes and bloodshed that is happening, let's say, on their own holy places. As a Christian and as a Jew, do you not feel remorse or regret or shame that
you must have seen these videos online. These videos online of nuns being spat at, and the custodian of the Holy Church in Jerusalem, rubbish being thrown at him, and like abuses
by these Zionist settlers,
and abuses and the derogatory terms, calling his mother,
that's
etc. Right? So this it is reminiscent of what we used to study in history, right? That when the Prophet was in Mecca before his migration, how the unbelievers in Mecca, these die-hard enemies of the Holy Prophet and his narrative, they would treat him. And again, in the biblical narratives of how people would treat the prophets and their mothers and their fathers, etc. Right? So you see this. This is all online. I'm not making this up. This is not like something that is made by AI. These are videos. Like if we talk about Rachel Corrie. Like imagine being crushed to death by a bulldozer. Not shot. Not shot in the middle of your forehead so that you die instantly. Imagine being crushed to death. Imagine being a white woman from the United States. So much is talked about these days about privilege. No, brothers and sisters, If you're on the path of resistance, then you have no privilege. It doesn't matter whether you're black or white, right? It's only people who are, part and parcel, as Malcolm X said, right? So if you're black, if you're a house slave, and even if you're white, if you're a house slave, they'll give you some pieces of food and some rubbish to eat and kind of satisfy yourself. But when push comes to shove, if you start defending the oppressed of the world, it doesn't matter whether you're white, you're Hispanic, you're black. The boot of Zionist Nazism, Zionist fascism will come down on your neck quicker than you can say whatever.
I mean, and if you look at in the present day, this is what we see. So, for example, Donald Trump and all of his,
Threatening the American population.
Yeah, this psychotic administration of this guy. I mean, they're all, I don't know, right? But all of them are psychotic, to be honest with you. From top to bottom in this administration. The previous administration were all psychotics as well. It's not like they were any better, right?
Yeah.
15 months they did what they did.
They are more overtly psychotic.
Yeah.
And the previous administration were maybe more covertly psychotic. So they would like to
But you see this whole thing, right? So at the present day that the American students born and raised in America, American citizens, their mom and dad are Americans, and not like immigrant Americans, even though all Americans are immigrants, right?
Yeah.
Whether they're European immigrants like the Irish and the English back in colonial times, or they're immigrants now, the Mexicans and Indians and Chinese.
This itself is a joke. Like white Americans believe themselves to be the original Americans.
Yeah,
that is the amount of illiteracy that Donald Trump has.
Yeah,
right. He thinks that he and people like him, blonde hair, right? These are original Americans, and the immigrants are the others.
Yeah, right? That should be kicked out. And so what we see is that these again, quote unquote, homegrown American boys and girls, college girls, and going to good universities. They're not going to community college or
the cream of the cream.
The cream of the cream, right? I mean, British and Columbia University, and these guys, threatening them with deportation and jail time for what? For carrying a sign that says "Free Palestine."
Yeah, peaceful protest.
And you see this Nazism, this fascism, this repression of freedom of speech. But I don't know, Sayyid, I think we've kind of we have gone over time. But if you want to somehow find a way to wrap up this, definitely this Al-Quds Day 2025 is something that is really special. It is something that is unprecedented, and this is definitely not a time for people to slow down and
since we talked about barakah, right? Barakah, we talked about barakah. Sometimes even acts of oppression can be mubarak, right? When they lead people to the truth,
to awakening.
One of the things that was missing in the global puzzle of resistance was that people in the United States, in Europe, in United Kingdoms, maybe they were thinking that yes, we empathize with the Palestinians, but really it's not something that's going to come back full circle and bite us in the back, right? But now it has become apparent, and lucidly so, that Zionism is not something that you can consider a foreign ailment, an ailment that is only threatening Palestine or the Muslim lands, right? It is something that is threatening your freedom, the freedom of your children. I'm talking to the non-Muslim, homegrown Americans, Britishers, Europeans around the world, not South Koreans, right? Japanese. This is something that Zionism, the tentacles of this octopus, which controls the elite in your countries. These tentacles are so powerful and so their clutches are so tight around the political and the media elite of your countries that if you cross a red line, if you try to exercise your right of free speech in the proper way where it should be done, not towing the lines of these pseudo-intellectuals in your country and the pseudo celebrities in your country who want to use your motivation for freedom and justice and divert it into non-issues, dealing with micro-minorities or things that have to do with pronouns. When you raise your voice about actual blood that is being spilled, about actual children who are being destroyed and killed, about actual women who are being killed and raped and displaced, about actual men and old people who are being destroyed and broken into pieces, shattered, their homes shattered, actual cities being destroyed, right? When you start protesting against this,
the real things that matter on the land,
the masks will come off.
It's like
Then you're polite.
There's no formality then.
Your polite university administration always saying, dear students, will suddenly turn into the Gestapo.
They did.
Your polite media outlets, CNN, BBC, I don't know, MSNBC, Sky News, all of a sudden the masks will come off and rabid dogs will start barking where you once saw sheep in the morning programs, right? And they were so nice and so polite, and all of a sudden they want to destroy your narrative by hook or crook, right? They'll treat you like the worst form of enemy, right? Suddenly all of your politicians who go around your cities campaigning for votes saying freedom, progress, right? Just yesterday, I read this tweet and it was brilliant. It was like a targeted strike at the heart of hypocrisy. Someone tweeted, he said, okay, Donald Trump, you're cutting off US aid to all of these different projects around the world. What about this list? So many millions of dollars to Tel Aviv University. So many millions of dollars to Falah Foundation, that so-and-so foundation in Israel. So many millions of dollars to aid in Israel. And all of this put together is more probably than all of the US aid programs combined. Right? So if you're so sincere to the people in the working classes in the United States and you want to keep their money and reinvest it into their own lives, then why aren't you cutting off the pipelines and the supply lines of the billions and billions of dollars being pumped on the books and off the books to Israel? Why is that still happening? Because brothers and sisters, you, this guy, and others like him in the Democrats, in the Republicans, in Labour, in the Conservative Party, the Tories, etc., 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 all of the political elite, they are the servants of Zionism.
And so this threat and this danger is very real to every person in the world.
Nowadays, they have this fashion, like it's been around ever since TikTok and Instagram, that they give out this challenge in society. I'd like to throw out a challenge. Maybe someone will put this into action. Brothers and sisters, write to your congressmen, write to your senators, write to your MPs, right, your representatives, even in the city level, your council members. Tell them to come out openly on record, on social media and say that I am not a Zionist. We're not even asking them to condemn Zionism. Just tell them to come out and say, I'm not a Zionist. I don't know about these issues and I don't care about it. Let's see whether they have the guts to do that. And I can guarantee you, the vast majority, 99.9999999% of them will not.
Yes, just come out and say that I'm not a Zionist.
Just come out and say I'm not a Zionist.
Well, I don't have an opinion on that.
I don't have an opinion on Zionism. I'm not a Zionist. Right? Let's see whether that happens. So this is the reality of what's going on. Zionism is a threat to freedoms at home in the United States, in UK, in Europe. It is a threat to the economy of these countries. The poverty, the homelessness that you see is because, one of the major reasons is because your money, your tax dollars, your tax pounds, your tax currency is being shipped away to this colonial and imperialist and Zionist project somewhere else, right? The reason why you can't send your kids to school, the reasons why you can't make ends meet, the reasons why you come on social media crying in your car and saying, what am I supposed to do? I'm a hardworking person. I work like 16 hours a day and still I don't have enough money to pay for my mortgage, right? The reason, brothers and sisters, the primary reason is not all of that counter speak and that double speak that they give you in the media. It's not because of the migrants and the few Hispanics and the black people and the Muslims. No, it's because your countries are taking a large part of the pie more than 80% of your cake is being thrown at the Zionists. Right? And you're allowed to have these bare bones with no meat on it.
Like Marie Antoinette, she said, let them eat cake.
Let them eat
like
cake, right?
There's no cake, woman.
Right? See,
we know what happened to her.
The psychology of this elite. So as we see right now, and just a last word, this is in itself a topic, but why are they so sensitive about the college and the university and the campus protests? Because they know, maybe the protesters themselves don't know where these protests are leading right now, strategically speaking. But the elite, the Zionist elite, know that if we allow this to happen, this will turn into a larger justice-seeking movement for the emancipation of these countries from the yoke of Zionism. Because then if the doors are opened, if people start listening, people start learning, then they'll see all the dots connecting together. And then they'll see that their own enemy number one is Zionism and no one else.
Jazakallah Sayyid Aghali Raza. A good point to end the show. Inshallah, may Allah bless you and yours, and may Allah have accepted all of your worship and du'as and fasting in this holy month of Ramadan. And we really pray, inshallah, that there's a huge turnout. And I'm very sure that there will be a very large turnout on the Al-Quds International Day. And may Allah help our Palestinian brothers and sisters and give them freedom and liberation from occupation, inshallah. And thank you so much, dear viewers, for joining us on the Islamic Pulse Talk Show. We were talking about the Al-Quds Day Rally 2025. We hope you have a blessed rest of the holy month of Ramadan. May Allah accept all of your prayers and your fasting. Please pray for our Palestinian brothers and sisters. May they achieve that freedom and liberation from occupation that is their divine right and their human right. And also, please go ahead and join a Al-Quds rally. And if there isn't one, then go ahead and do and have your own Al-Quds rally, inshallah. May Allah accept it from you all. That's all from us for now. Fi amanillah, and assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wherever you are.